Welcome back to another deep dive. We are so genuinely glad you're here with us today, sitting in as the crucial third person in the room for this one.
Yeah, we have a really fascinating discussion lined up.
We really do.
Yeah.
So I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine someone who listens to you vent about your awful day for like 3 hours straight.
Just endless patience, right?
Exactly. They bring you soup when you're sick, they text you just to make sure you got home safely, and they constantly tell you that you deserve the world.
Sounds pretty ideal, honestly.
It does. But now imagine that exact same person is actively, methodically isolating you from your friends and secretly destroying your self-esteem.
Yeah, that is a really terrifying pivot.
It's chilling. And today we are opening up a deeply unsettling source text that exposes this completely different kind of predator. We're looking at the architecture of toxic relationships, but, and this is key, we are tossing out the stereotype we all know.
Right. The loud, boastful, mirror-obsessed egomaniac.
Yes. Instead, our mission today is a deep dive into the covert narcissist.
Which is so important to unpack because, when we hear the word narcissist, we immediately picture that guy talking over everyone at a dinner party.
Oh yeah, the overt grandiose type.
Exactly. You can spot them a mile away, which means you have the power to just turn around and walk in the other direction. But the subject of the material we're analyzing today, they operate entirely in the shadows.
They really do.
Yeah, this is the narcissist who hides behind the mask of a saint or a healer or a savior.
And the author of our source text calls this specific dynamic the narcissist's playground, which is a title that it really gets under your skin.
It's very fitting, though.
It is. It's fascinating and, frankly, a little terrifying.
Yeah.
Because we are exploring how surface-level kindness, the extreme empathy, the constant offers to step in and help, can actually be the ultimate camouflage.
Right.
We're talking about a situation where the person throwing you a life preserver might be the exact same person actively pulling you under the water.
That's a great way to put it. And to understand how to get away with this, the source material grounds their behavior in a pretty well-known psychological model. It's called the Cartman drama triangle.
Okay, let's unpack this. How does the text use this triangle?
Well, the text frames it in a very specific, almost weaponized way. So the triangle consists of 3 distinct roles. You have the victim, the persecutor, which is like the cruel tyrant or the abuser, and the savior.
Got it. Victim, persecutor, savior.
Right. But what makes this dynamic so dangerous is that these aren't assigned seats. The roles are incredibly fluid.
Wait, so the person who steps in to play the savior doesn't just stay the benevolent hero forever?
Not at all. And the text uses this really striking, highly visual analogy to describe this fluidity. It compares these 3 roles to waves in a stormy sea.
Oh, wow, like they're constantly moving.
Exactly. They're never static. They're constantly shifting, rising, and crashing into one another. In one moment, someone might be playing the helpless victim to get your sympathy. Then, in a flash, like the very next wave, they become the cruel persecutor attacking you. Or, suddenly, they shift again and become the savior, riding in to rescue you from the chaos they themselves just created.
Okay, let's ground that in reality for a second, because that shifting wave concept is crucial. How does a savior suddenly crash into a persecutor in a real-world scenario?
Well, it usually happens the exact second their ego is challenged.
Ah.
Yeah. So let's say the savior gives you unsolicited, highly detailed advice on how to handle a conflict you're having with your boss.
Okay.
They insist they know exactly what you should do, but, you decide to handle it your own way. To a normal friend, that's totally fine.
Right, a normal friend would just say, cool, hope it goes well.
Exactly. But to the covert narcissist, you haven't just rejected their advice, you've actually threatened their core identity as the all-knowing rescuer. So instantly the wave crashes.
They flip.
They shift from savior to persecutor. They lash out. They'll say something like, fine, handle it yourself. Fail on your own. See if I ever try to help you again.
Yeah.
They are actively punishing you for not letting them play God.
That makes me think of like a Trojan horse. You picture this savior type, and on the outside, they just look like a walking warm blanket.
Yeah, very comforting.
Right. They present as this highly empathetic, sacrificing healer whose entire script is just, I just want to help you. But inside that wooden horse, underneath that cozy blanket, it's actually a grandiose narcissist looking for a massive power trip.
That's spot on.
They aren't rolling into your life to help. They are rolling in to conquer.
And inside that Trojan horse, there's a total lack of moral boundaries. The text explicitly points out that this supposed help is actually highly antisocial behavior. It's just dressed up as charity.
Wait, how is helping antisocial?
Because genuine help empowers the other person to eventually stand on their own 2 feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the covert narcissist's help is designed to do the exact opposite.
They want you dependent.
Completely. They're trying to satisfy their own massive ego by creating a dynamic where you are entirely reliant on them. They'll claim they just had good intentions, but that intention is a calculated mechanism to breed reliance.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. As I was reading through the source material, there was this one specific behavioral quirk that just stopped me in my tracks.
Oh, I think I know which one you're talking about.
It's so bizarre, but when you look at the mechanics of it, it makes chilling sense. The text talks about their use of the honest sidekick.
Yes, the stage set. This is a brilliant, albeit really dark, psychological tactic.
How does it work?
So the savior narcissist will very deliberately keep a genuinely honest, sincere, transparent person in their immediate social circle.
Like a best friend or an assistant or something.
Exactly. They might bring the dinner parties, introduce them to you early on, and just kind of parade them around.
Yeah.
But it's not out of actual friendship or shared values.
They use them as a prop.
Literally a prop. Think about the halo effect. Standing next to a truly good, open person makes the savior's fake empathy look even more authentic by comparison.
Oh, wow. So it's a stage performance.
100%. By associating with someone who has a stellar reputation for being kind, the savior borrows their credibility. It makes the illusion that much stronger to the outside world.
So they're basically signaling to you, the target, look at the company I keep, I must be a safe harbor.
Exactly. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, they're completely capable of betrayal, backstabbing, and profound emotional manipulation.
But wait, I have a logical question here. If their whole identity, like their entire ego, is built around being the ultimate protector and the knight in shining armor,
Right.
what happens if the victim's life is actually somewhat stable? Like, what if there's no immediate threat, no evil boss, no toxic ex? If they need a dragon to slay to prove they are the hero, what do they do when there isn't a dragon?
They manufacture one. Yeah, and that brings us to the absolute darkest part of this manipulation. The text confirms that if there is no persecutor in your life, the savior will quietly and systematically invent one.
They just create a villain out of thin air. How do they pull that off without sounding totally crazy?
It starts very, very subtly. They don't just point a finger and scream, villain. They plant tiny seeds of doubt about the people closest to you.
Oh, I see.
They will manipulate the narrative to label your friends, your spouse, your colleagues, or your family members as hidden persecutors.
Give me an example of how that sounds.
So you might mention a minor disagreement you had with your best friend, and the savior will tilt their head, look deeply concerned, and say something like, you know, I've noticed they always belittle your achievements. Are you sure they really have your best interests at heart? They seem a little jealous of you.
Wow, so they are reframing normal human friction as malicious abuse.
Exactly. And over time, these seeds take root. The savior amplifies every minor slight into a massive betrayal. They convince you that the world is a dangerous, toxic place, and that everyone else is out to get you.
Which isolates you.
Precisely. Gradually, they isolate you from your actual support network, casting everyone else as the bad guy. And that leaves them standing alone on the stage as the sole hero you can trust.
They basically burn down the victim's village just so they can offer them a tent.
That is a perfect way to put it.
That is terrifying because it feels so much like genuine concern. I'm just looking out for you.
It is incredibly isolating, and it's entirely by design. The goal is to strip away your independent reality testing. If you don't have friends or family to bounce ideas off of, you become completely reliant on the narcissist's version of reality.
You know, it's terrifying because it happens right in plain sight. Uncovering these hidden dynamics, exposing the gears turning behind these behaviors is exactly why we do these deep dives into the source material.
Absolutely.
And if you're listening and finding this breakdown of human behavior as eye-opening as we are, it would be amazing if you could subscribe and turn on notifications. It's a small thing, but it's the best way to make sure you catch every single conversation we have. It keeps you in the loop as we unpack these complex sources together.
And understanding the profile of the target is the next crucial piece of this puzzle.
Right. Who actually falls for this? Because I think the natural knee-jerk reaction for anyone listening is to think, well, I would never fall for that. I'm too logical. I'd see right through the fake savior.
Of course, that's what we all want to believe.
But I was looking at this psychological profile in the text, and it feels contradictory at first glance. If this savior is actually an apex predator with a grandiose ego, why would they go after someone who is already heartbroken or vulnerable?
What do you mean?
Well, you'd think a narcissist would want a shiny, highly successful, powerful partner as a trophy to boost their ego, right?
That's a great observation. But here's the thing. A powerful, secure partner doesn't need a savior.
Ah, good point.
A highly independent person with strong boundaries is actually a narcissist's worst nightmare because they will challenge the narcissist's need for absolute control.
So they avoid them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the expert analysis in the text points out that these predators actively hunt for vulnerability. They are looking for a shattered baseline.
Who are their prime targets?
They target heartbroken, lonely, and depressed women. Specifically, they look for someone who has just gone through a fresh breakup or a major life crisis, someone who has recently had their trust completely broken.
Because their emotional immune system is compromised.
Yes.
The defenses are totally down. It's the classic shoulder to cry on trope. We've all seen this play out in real life or in media.
Oh, constantly.
The guy who shows up right after a devastating breakup, and he's just, so willing to listen. He listens to you cry for hours. He offers a safe harbor. He seemingly asks for nothing in return.
Yeah.
And the source material actually makes this slightly dark, humorous observation about that. It says this exact manipulation arc is a cultural staple. It's literally the plot of dozens of old Turkish Yusuf movies.
Yes. The Yusuf cinema reference in the text is perfect because it highlights how deeply ingrained this trope really is.
Like it's a universal narrative.
Exactly. In those films, the heroine hits absolute rock bottom, society has turned its back on her, and suddenly this supposedly pure-hearted, flawless, good guy swoops in to catch her when she falls.
And it's so romanticized on screen.
It is, but in reality is a highly calculated trap.
But the text gets into the underlying psychology driving this behavior, and it is incredibly disturbing. It's not just a misguided attempt at romance. What's fascinating here is that the source notes many of these saviors are actually harboring deep, unconscious misogyny.
It is a profound paradox.
Yeah.
On the surface, they present themselves as the ultimate protectors of women. But the psychological reality outlined in the text is that unconsciously there is an intense anger and contempt toward women.
Where does that anger even come from?
It usually stems from the narcissist's own deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and powerlessness.
Wait, walk me through that mechanism. How does feeling powerless turn into wanting to play the hero for a vulnerable woman?
Well, by saving someone who is completely broken, the narcissist is instantly placed in a position of supreme authority.
No. They become the boss.
Exactly. They aren't seeking an equal partnership, they are seeking a subject to rule over. They use this heroic mask as a shield to hide their own profound feelings of worthlessness.
That makes so much sense.
The internal logic is basically, if this person literally cannot survive without me, then I must be a god. It is aggression and domination born out of a feeling of powerlessness.
So the message isn't actually, I am the savior, you are safe.
Now, the psychological translation is, you are weak, and therefore I own you.
Wow! That completely flips the script. It's not an act of service, it's an act of domination. You're not their partner, you're their emotional captive.
Precisely. And the text outlines a very grim, highly predictable cycle that follows once the trap is sprung. There are 4 distinct phases.
Okay, what's phase 1?
Step 1 is gaining trust through the rescue operation we just described.
Yeah.
Swooping in when they're vulnerable.
Right. And then?
Step 2 is capture.
What does that capture phase actually look like in daily life?
It looks like an overwhelming presence that slowly morphs into surveillance.
Oh, like constantly checking your location.
Exactly. They're checking in constantly under the guise of just making sure you're okay. They manage your schedule. They start making decisions for you because, you've been through so much and shouldn't have to stress.
They disguise control as care.
Exactly. And before you know it, you are emotionally and logistically trapped in their web.
And once they have you trapped?
That leads to step 3. Objectification. They use the victim. Often, the text notes, this reduces the victim to a sexual object or purely a source of narcissistic supply. The empathy just vanishes.
Just disappears.
Completely. And finally, step 4. The flight.
They leave?
Yeah. Once they have extracted what they need for their ego, and the victim starts asking for genuine, mutual support, or worse, starts setting boundaries, the savior rapidly flees.
Wow.
They abandon the person they promised to protect, leaving them behind to go hunt for the next fresh heartbreak.
So what does this all mean for their own self-awareness? That begs a massive question. How do they sleep at night?
That is the million-dollar question.
Do they wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and think, I am an evil manipulator and I'm going to ruin someone's life today? Or do they genuinely think they are the good guys in this story?
It's the latter. And that is exactly what makes them so profoundly dangerous. They aren't twirling a villain mustache in the mirror.
They believe their own hype.
They do. The text introduces a psychological defense mechanism called splitting. In the original source language, it's referred to as bulme.
Mm.
These covert narcissists actually believe their own lies. They genuinely see themselves as flawless saviors.
But how is that mathematically possible when their actions are leaving a trail of destruction? How do you isolate someone, use them, abandon them, and still think you're a saint?
Because splitting is a primitive defense mechanism that fractures reality. It is the psychological inability to hold nuance.
Like black and white thinking.
Exactly. Normal human beings can accept that they are a mix of good and bad. You could say, I am a decent person, but I acted really selfishly yesterday.
Right. We can hold both truths.
But a narcissist cannot tolerate that internal conflict. So they split. They put all their perceived goodness into one bucket, which becomes their entire conscious identity.
And the bad stuff.
All their badness, their flaws, their malice, and their destructive impulses get entirely projected onto the external world, onto everyone else.
So they literally rewrite reality in their own minds. When they're isolating a victim, they don't see themselves setting a trap. They see themselves righteously punishing the victim's toxic friends.
Exactly.
When they abandon the victim, they tell themselves, I tried so hard to heal her, but she was just too damaged.
Yep. They see themselves doing God's work. And because they believe they are fundamentally pure and righteous, there are zero boundaries to their behavior.
Not at all.
The text highlights this terrifying lack of limits. Sexual, emotional, ethical. None of the normal social contracts apply to them.
Because if you are a saint, any action you take is inherently justified.
Exactly.
They will steal a spouse, they will use a colleague, they will betray their closest friend without a second thought, because in their twisted logic, it's for the greater good. Every destructive action is just a necessary tool to feed their ego.
Which brings us to a fascinating point the source makes about where these predators naturally gravitate.
Mm-hmm.
If your entire psychological survival depends on being seen as a selfless savior, where is the best place to hide?
Oh, I see where this is going. The helping professions.
Exactly. They flock to the personal development wellness sectors. They masquerade as life coaches, alternative therapists, spiritual gurus, and wellness guides.
Wow.
The text notes that these professions provide them with the ultimate cover.
It's the perfect camouflage. If your official job title is healer or spiritual guide, you don't even have to convince people you're a savior. You just hand them your business card.
Right. You have automatic, institutionalized legitimacy.
You just say, my entire purpose in life is to help people heal, and society gives you a free pass to hunt. And not just that, but the profession provides a steady, endless stream of vulnerable, hurting people walking right through your door.
It's a hunting ground. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the source points out how modern society impacts this. Technology has supercharged this dynamic.
Oh, for sure. How so? Just through reach.
Reach, but also aesthetic. Social media has become their ultimate playground. It allows them to craft an incredibly polished mask.
Like the perfect Instagram grid.
Exactly. They use highly professional aesthetics, soothing imagery, and they co-opt the language of therapy. They use buzzwords like boundaries, healing, trauma, and holding space.
Oh, that makes my skin crawl.
It's insidious. Technology has elevated them into modern-day apex predators because they can project the image of the perfect savior to thousands of vulnerable people with a single, perfectly curated post.
It's chilling. They weaponize the very language designed to help people in order to trap them, which naturally brings us to the ultimate cost of this specific type of narcissist.
Yes, the aftermath.
As the text reflects, surviving a covert narcissist isn't just about getting over a bad relationship or a tough breakup. It is an existential betrayal.
The source material captures this distinction perfectly. It points out that you can see an aggressive, loud abuser coming. You can brace yourself against an overt threat.
You put your guard up.
Right. But the savior narcissist is silent. They bypass all your alarms because they're wearing the uniform of a medic. The text uses a really haunting phrase for this. It says they hug you while they're poisoning you.
Oh, wow. They hug you while they're poisoning you. That image really sticks with you because you're leaning into that hug for comfort, completely unaware that it's the source of the pain.
And the resulting damage is catastrophic to a person's psyche. When the mask finally slips, The victim doesn't just lose trust in that one specific partner or friend.
They lose their faith in the very concept of goodness.
Exactly. Because if the person who acted like an absolute saint turned out to be a monster, then anyone could be a monster.
It's a total loss of faith in humanity.
They lose their faith in humanity. But worst of all, they lose faith in their own internal compass. They are left paralyzed thinking, if my judgment was so incredibly flawed that I invited a predator into my life and called him a savior, how can I ever trust my own mind again?
It completely shatters their reality. Look, this has been an incredibly heavy, intense exploration of human behavior, but deeply necessary.
Absolutely necessary.
Exposing the mechanics of how these traps work is the only way to disarm them. And as we wrap up this analysis, I just want to warmly remind you, yes, you listening, that if this conversation sparked an aha moment for you, subscribing and turning on notifications is the best way to make sure you're here for our next deep dive into the source material.
We really do have so many more fascinating, eye-opening texts to unpack together.
We do, and to close this out, the source text actually ends with a really beautiful, poignant sign-off.
It's a nice shift in tone.
It is. After detailing all of this darkness and manipulation, the author leaves the reader with a traditional heartfelt mother's prayer. May God always bring good people your way.
That is beautiful.
I think after exploring the murky, disorienting waters of the fake saviors, that wish feels more vital and necessary than ever.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that genuine goodness does exist, even if it's being mimicked by those who lack it.
Right.
And as we leave that thought with you, this raises an important, lingering question to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If the most dangerous predators hide behind a flawless, perfectly curated mask of extreme helpfulness and empathy, how do we learn to differentiate between genuine, selfless kindness and a covert narcissist's trap, without becoming totally cynical and pushing away the people who truly care about us?